I'm gonna say that's fiction.
Fiction.
No, yeah, fact.
Fiction. It's actually more of an aerosol. That's one of the misinterpretations is the term vaping. It sounds like vapor, which sounds like a humidifier, but in fact it's actually an aerosol. It's more like what would come out of a can of hairspray.
Fiction.
That's fiction.
Fact.
Fiction?
I'm gonna go with fiction.
That is fact, but I think it's important to qualify that there are still 40-some chemicals in vaping devices. The mistake that young people are making is that there's no chemicals in it versus a ton of chemicals in cigarettes. And there's even some chemicals that are in the vapor that aren't in cigarettes.
That is a fact.
Fact.
I'm gonna go a little bit of both. It's true and it's fictitious at the same time.
Fiction? I don't know. Fiction, I guess.
That's fact. In these vapes, there's chemicals like formaldehyde and benzene and toluene. The irony is that there's actually several of the same chemicals that are in cigarettes.
Probably false, yeah.
Fact.
That's a fact, yeah.
There's some studies that kind of say a little bit of both, but there's actually a growing body of research that oftentimes with adults that use these devices to quit smoking, a lot of them either go back or they just become dependent on the vaping device and never quit nicotine altogether. So there's kind of a mixed body of research with that one, so it's kind of hard to give a definitive answer on that.
There's been a huge surge of high schoolers using e-cigarettes or vaping.
70% of teens are exposed to e-cigarette ads, causing high schoolers to become addicted to a device intended to curb adult smoking.
Oh, dude! The founders of Juul had pledged to sort of disrupt the tobacco industry. In the early years of their product, by their own words, had flawed marketing where they were inadvertently courting adolescents and young adults, featuring like models and beautiful people.
Yeah, nothing glamorous about it.
No.
You know, they're paying influencers on YouTube and Instagram to use it as part of their marketing campaign.
Squeeze it and throw it in there, right?
With 30.7% of impressionable teenage e-cigarette users beginning to smoke within the next 6 months, it is clear that this means big bucks for big tobacco.
This week, these ads are hitting television networks and major newspapers across the country.
And a lot of these e-cigarettes now, too, I should mention, are owned by Big Tobacco. Big Tobacco knew decades ago that by getting teenagers hooked on tobacco that they're hooked for life.
It has been a campaign designed to preserve their enormous profits, whatever the cost.
And so Big Tobacco now owns e-cigarettes. So you can bet dollars to donuts that they already know ways to appeal to teenagers because they do want them to get hooked for life.
Also entice kids to start vaping.
After noticing the ever-growing rates of this usage among teens, the FDA decided to step in.
The Food and Drug Administration is targeting the teen vaping epidemic.
The FDA has announced that Juul and other e-cigarette manufacturers have to answer a lot of questions regarding the safety of their products, the marketing of their products, the ingredient of their products, and could be facing sanctions or regulations to sort of put the squeeze on them.
For materials related to how Juul appeals to children.
Despite the FDA's efforts, they have been unable to extinguish social media's increasing impact.
It shows celebrities like Rihanna, Robert Pattinson, Orlando Bloom all caught on camera smoking.
Teens, with their access to social media with Snapchat and Instagram, are most providing marketing for the device. Now it's sort of like teenagers are marketing their peers on social media. Manufacturers realize that the advertising is being done by the teenagers themselves. They can just stand back and sell the devices to them.
And with this form of uncontrollable advertising, unknown dangers continue to lurk among today's youth.
Wow. It's a huge problem.
It really is. Sanjay, good to
those nicotine-containing devices carry known health risks to developing teenage brains.
Physically, vaping and nicotine has a major effect on the body.
The impact of nicotine on the body, probably primarily, is on the cardiovascular system. It could increase heartbeat and the force by which the heart beats. It could increase blood pressure because it constricts arteries and small arteries throughout the body. That high doses of nicotine can make them deathly ill.
Asthma type symptoms that they might be attributing to allergies or asthma or other things and might not realize it's because of that aerosol that they're taking in over and over and over again and the damage that it's doing to the lungs.
There are side effects that you cannot see.
But on the brain, there are nicotine receptors throughout the brain. They can be found on the emotional brain, the so-called limbic system, and they can be found in the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex does not finish developing until the age of 25.
It does seem that in laboratory studies that you can in effect prime the part of the brain associated with pleasure with nicotine and make these individuals, these adolescents, more vulnerable to addiction behavior later in life.
And because the teenage brain is, that reward system in the teen brain is particularly susceptible to that you're seeing kids that are very quickly getting hooked where they're using these devices 60, 70, 80 times a day.
Pods, which some kids tell us they go through in a day, contain roughly the same amount of nicotine as a pack of cigarettes.
But there is one more danger that has consequences that could take a lifetime to overcome.
Do you want to go forward with this addiction, this habit, that you may not have immediate adverse consequences, except maybe again the cost or your parents.
Nicotine from e-cigarettes can cause cancer in mice.
And the fact that nicotine really is one of the most addictive drugs, right up there with cocaine and heroin. I think young people are misreading the potential of how nicotine is playing a role in this, and they're not realizing how addictive it really is.
The rise of vaping has been so fast in such a short amount of time.
The Juuls are popular because they're very small.
A constant upward trend in teenage usage, from which a new study by the U.S. Surgeon General
officially declaring e-cigarette use among youth an epidemic
revealed that 1 in 5 high school students uses e-cigarettes. But why?
Another vape session, vape talk.
People are posting pictures of themselves vaping, whether it's inside of school or outside of school, mostly outside. Oh, this person does this, that means I can do it too.
And along with the advertisements, something else is enticing teens and drawing them in on a more personal level.
Peer acceptance and social acceptance that they haven't found with other groups, or it's kind of maybe alleviated some of that insecurity they have. Unfortunately, that's not a healthy way to find that acceptance, but I think that's the reality of it for some kids.
And just because they are accepted by others doesn't always mean they know what they're doing or what vaping actually is in the first place.
And we think it's trendy, and it seems fun, and I don't think it's bad for you.
The noun form of that is vapor. And so when you have flavor cupcake humidifier air in somebody's mind, why would they think it's dangerous if they're thinking of putting their head over a humidifier and just inhaling pleasant smelling cupcake air? There's naturally going to be an appeal to that. I wish they were still called e-cigarettes because it still has that connotation of being a cigarette. It's a lack of understanding of what really what kids are inhaling that's at the root of why it's exploded over the past couple of years.